Agrimony. I'll pass this around. One of the most common teas that I use. Agrimony herb. We use the entire aerial portions. This is really easy to grow. I had to take over part of my garden at one place I've lived before. I'll pass it around. Okay. So agrimony, we use the leaf as the main, or just the whole aerial part. This is really one of our main true kidney tonics. Remember when we covered diuretics, we said that most any herb that affects the kidney or bladder, historically, we just call a diuretic, but that doesn't mean it's something that actually flushes your bladder like a diuretic drug. So this is actually one of our main tonics to strengthen kidney function. So we can use this for people that have kidney disease and diseases of the kidneys and bladder. It tones the bladder. It tones the kidney. This is one of the things we use when people have elevated kidney function labs like BUN and creatinine. And the doctor's monitoring that. This shows like kidney stress or inflammation, these two labs. This is one of our main safe herbs we can do for that. Usually we'll combine it with nettle seed and nettle leaf for that. But here we have one of the true kidney tonics and bladder tonics, meaning when the bladder is weak, when the kidneys are weak. What does a weak bladder or kidney look like? You have to pee all the time. And often when you urinate, it feels incomplete. There can be urgency. There can be pain or discomfort before. There can also be incontinence, right? That's like a really common sign of a weak kidney or bladder. So often with elderly patients, we just see chronic UTIs. This is like a great way to strengthen the bladder with chronic UTIs. This is, together with marshmallow, this is one of my favorite herbs when the lining of the ureter gets irritated from having so many ureter probes put in for chronic urinary problems, like when people have to have their bladder or kidney scoped every 3 to 6 months. Every time that, that tube goes in there, it is creating a little scar tissue and irritation, right? So this is one of the best things we can do when people have to have that done a lot. That's why I use this a lot for kidney and bladder cancer. It doesn't I don't know that it helps the cancer, but it's really helpful for all the irritation from the treatments for cancer. Okay. So it's very specifically indicated for, you ready for this? This is really specific. Deep soreness and tenderness over the kidney area. So people that have chronic lower back pain. Sharp, cutting, deep-seated pains in the lower back that radiate even all the way to the lower abdomen or belly button. So this is common in UTIs, cystitis, which is like inflammation of the urinary tract or bladder. Inflammation of the kidney or bladder. Foul smelling urine, sediment in the urine, which we would call stones, bladder stones, kidney stones, or crystals.
And you would mix that with marshmallow, right?
For that, we'd probably mix it with something like marshmallow for the stones. Discoloration and dirty skin. This happens a lot when people, here they're talking about more like when people become elderly, they get all the aging spots and the little broken blood vessels, especially when people have weaker kidneys. Because remember, your kidneys play a role in your blood cell production too.
So if you have an older person in who's like, yeah, I have to pee like twice in the middle of the night and they have age spots, fine, schedule the kidney.
And they have, dribbling or incontinence and chronic bladder kidney problems. This is perfect remedy.
Is it safe with prescription drugs? Like,
Yeah, it does not interact with any known prescription drug except blood thinners. We just don't combine it with that. Yeah, that's not known, but it's just like a precaution. Because this herb is in the rose family, so it's very astringent. It sounds like we're talking about a demulcent, right? But this is actually an astringent. So this is why it pairs well with marshmallow. That is a demulcent. So this is in the rose family. Remember how those rose things tone and are very astringent? That's why you also use it for blood in the urine. Any kind of urinary dysfunction, including bedwetting with children and adults. Any kind of pain in the kidney.
Give it to somebody who's on dialysis.
You can use this with dialysis. Yep, it is safe and helpful. If somebody's had a kidney transplant, like we talked about, we usually just don't do much because there's so many unknowns about that. But with dialysis, this is fine. Okay. So basically, literally any problem with the bladder, the kidney, the lining of the bladder, any weakness. Women that have had bladder slings and have a lot of problems. This is one of the few remedies for damage to the nerves of the bladder, like someone had a surgery, a gynecology surgery, or a sling, and then maybe they nicked a nerve or irritated a nerve or something. Okay. It's also just a major lower back remedy. If someone has chronic back pain and also a lot of kidney bladder problems, this can be a really good tonic. It is extremely safe. Because it's in the rose family, we can also use this for just generally inflammation, like we would use roses for any inflammation of the stomach or colon. But it's not its main use. It's more targets the bladder. Energy and direction is downward for sure. This is also one of the main herbs we use for tongue surgeries. You have tongue cancer or you have a growth on your tongue, these different things. I see a lot of these types of things when people have to have parts of their tongue or something removed on their tongue or gums. This is a really good remedy to help kind of heal that after surgery. So the patient would drink this as a tea and kind of swish it around the tongue.
Is it cooling?
It's cooling. These are good questions. Yeah. Cooling, downward energy. Its tissue state, right, to review, is relaxed or boggy, damp, however we want to say that. Okay. It's also used a lot for vaginal discharge. It does tone the uterus a little bit, but that's not its main use. This is one of those herbs that's pretty narrowly used for the kidney and bladder only. lost my other note on it. Okay. So the main thing I use this for is for chronic cystitis. I use this a lot in the elderly who have chronic incontinence, bladder problems. I use this a lot in men after they've had a prostate surgery and have a lot of bladder problems. And the legendary use of this herb that always helps. This is like the main herb for interstitial cystitis. So interstitial cystitis is a autoimmune disease where the bladder is chronically inflamed and irritated and painful. It's very painful to have. Because it's an autoimmune disease, it's often triggered by stress, food allergies, diet changes. So it's very common for people that have this to always have a flare up when they're stressed or when they travel and are drinking like alcohol will irritate it and caffeine. So you can even have like some low-grade blood in the urine from it or microscopic blood. So it's like diverticulitis kind of your bladder and ureter.
So does that fix it, or do you just have to take it away?
Agrimony drastically helps to heal the tissue and helps resolve the pain of it, like 90% of the time or more. Women will often have to take this long term, but after that point, you may just only need it if you feel like you're going to have a flare up or you're having a flare up. Yeah.
It help like in the beginning of UTI symptoms.
It's kind of helpful for a UTI, but you would have to probably combine it with something like a golden seal or corn silk for that. This herb is, although also best taken as a tea. That's how I've always seen it do amazing things. I use it some in a tincture for bladder and prostate and sometimes digestive problems, but mostly works really well as a tea. It's not common enough to find as a capsule, unfortunately. So we're limited to either the tincture or the tea. It's very easy to grow in your garden. It almost tastes a little sour. It's like a little astringent and sour. Should have a card of it with our cards, right? Deal a card here. Somebody want to find Agrimony? What's that? Yeah, the tea actually, this is almost like a, throughout different times in history, this is used as a tea substitute, like when tea could not be obtained. Do you want to see if you can find an Agrimony card? It's not super antibacterial, but it's very anti-inflammatory to the bladder and ureter. It does strengthen the lungs a little bit, but we don't use it for that much today. And it strengthens the uterus a little bit too, but we don't use it that much for it today. In Chinese medicine, it's still used for low blood counts, which a lot of kidney herbs do that. Okay.
So does it create more red blood cells or platelets?
It does help to build platelets and red blood cells. Does not affect white blood cells. This would just be the like red blood cells, hemoglobin, hematocrit, and platelets. Okay. Not in there? Oh. It's got little cockleburs on it, so you have to watch that with it. This is also topically a really good herb to do a compress of on your bladder or kidney or UTIs. Adults or children or elderly have bladder pain or lower back pain from kidney disease. This is really a great topical herb for the kidney and bladder. Maybe the best of all of them. Okay. It's very gentle. We just assume it probably interacts with blood thinners a little bit just because it's so astringent, but otherwise it doesn't have any known drug interactions or contraindications. Women that have interstitial cystitis, I usually have them try to drink 2 cups a day. That seems to be pretty therapeutic. You don't necessarily have to do more than that. Because it's in the rose family, it has that a little bit of a astringent, so it is good for bleeding too. Bleeding or microscopic blood. A lot of people go to the doctor and they're like, hey, you're fine, but you have like microscopic blood in your urine. We don't know why. This is like a good remedy for that. Okay. It is also on a archetypal level or on a emotional healing level. This remedy is really specific for extremely deep-seated fears that are causing a lot of kidney and bladder problems. Very deep-seated fears. Very deep-seated fears that are causing pain in the person's life. So Dr. Bach, you remember, had agrimony as one of the foundational flower essences. Agrimony is for people who on the outside appear to be very well put together and doing well, but on the inside have a lot of internalized pain and fears.
This go well with black cohosh for that.
This goes well with black cohosh. Yeah, you could do that. Mm-hmm. If the fear is targeting the bladder, we said pipsissewa, that quirky little herb, is very good for fear that's affecting the bladder and kidney. With children, this combines well with marshmallow or corn silk to strengthen the bladder. So it's really good bedwetting herb, chronic bedwetting. Okay. Questions on old agrimony? It's pretty gentle. It's pretty tasty. It tastes like a rose family herb. Smell is just kind of like just tea-like, right? It looks like tea. It kind of tastes like pu'er almost a little bit. It's pleasant. So remember, a lot of the idea we talked about a long time ago was that teas, because they're so water-based, are ideal for bladder and kidney problems because you're flushing the kidneys. So I would probably use this more as a capsule or tincture, but the tea just works so well and it's fairly pleasant and most people just don't mind taking it. Okay. Okay. Questions on agrimony? You all have to have some questions. I think with interstitial cystitis, it takes about 6 months to really heal the first layer of like really aggressive inflammation. And then you still have to sometimes take it for a while, but it takes a while for that type of an autoimmune problem to improve. Okay. No questions? Let's just cut and dry. Yeah.
I can't think of the word, but
What is it when they put that little tube in you so you can go to the bathroom?
Catheter.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
good for that.
It's very good for people that have to have chronic catheters or have pain or irritation from chronic catheters. Chronic catheter is one of those things that like you see a lot with the elderly or people like with kidney bladder have had kidney bladder cancer surgeries. This is kind of like where the medical world is sometimes so out of touch with patients. Like I can't tell you how many patients have been prescribed to self-cath. I have like a bunch of prostate cancer patients too, every day. And like you just can't self-cath. I have known only one guy and one lady who were willing to self-cath themselves all the time. I mean, it's just like that's not something most people could do. So it's painful, you know. So and a lot of nurses, you know, probably because they're in a hurry, I imagine, or just they do it so often, they're, you know, a little aggressive when they pull the catheter. A lot of people have a lot of pains and discomfort. It's not done really gently. So, yeah. So cath. Yeah, I remember the first patient I had years ago that had a bladder cancer. He was self-cathing every day, and I was like, "You're what? You're self-cathering yourself every day? That's like really intense." So, but you know, if you have like severe cancer or something and you're just gonna fill up with fluids, you don't have a choice but to do it, but it's still really difficult for people. Okay. Just remember, every time you get those scopes too, like they're very helpful for diagnosis, but they do create a lot of irritation. It's energetic irritation too, right? It's going the wrong direction, right? Okay. No other questions? Any Zoom land? Yeah.
Lasagna wants to know if it's good for people with black urine.
It's good for people of any color urine. Black urine's that's usually blood, so we'd want to get that checked out. But it is good for like bleeding in the urine. But black urine, we definitely would want to get checked out though.
And it's being harvested after the plant has gone to flower.
We harvest the whole part of this plant. You can harvest it when it's flowering. We just harvest it while it's still green. It's a very green plant. It gets really big. Like, I mean, I've had some in my yards that they just take over everything. They're very, very good. Have like little stick tights on it that they get kicked around and they just start spreading. So it's really easy medicinal to grow. Extremely easy from seed. Okay. Okay, let's close the chapter on agrimony.